the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We're joined now by Chip Towers, who covers the University of Georgia for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Chip, thanks. Good afternoon. Hope all is well. And want to get right to the Jonathan Taylor situation. For those who don't know a great deal about it, and not to ask you to be the conveyor of all information, basically he got in. Can you give us just maybe the whole backstory on him? And because I think there is some confusion on who he is and what happened.
Well, yeah, sure, Paul, and I'm glad to be with you. Thanks for the invitation. And yeah, Jonathan Taylor, a big kid, 6'4", 340 pounds, from South Georgia, ran into trouble really at Georgia First last March. He was one of four players that got caught up in a little check cashing scheme, double cashing their stipend checks that they got, and they were charged with theft by deception. And that got adjudicated later that summer, and he was placed in. He got a good deal, was placed in pre-trial intervention program, which basically meant if you don't get in any more trouble, you'll be okay. But later that summer, July 22nd, he got in an altercation with his girlfriend in the dormitories area. There were a lot of witnesses, and some really, really serious charges came as a result of that. 2 counts of aggravated assault. One of them, and this is really important, one of them aggravated assault by strangulation. And this is a family violence. It was his girlfriend, and it falls under the family violence purview, which is a big deal. And those are felony charges, and he has actually it's supposed to be arraigned. It was going to be next week. I understand now. I checked on it before I came onto your show today. He's supposed to be arraigned on those charges March 11th, and where the other thing, the theft by deception, he violated the terms of the pretrial intervention agreement when this other thing came up, and it's not real clear what's going to happen with that. His attorney, a guy by the name Kim Stevenson, hopes that all gets swept in together whenever it finally gets to trial, which, considering you're having a arraignment on March 11, it doesn't appear like that's going to be completed anytime soon, though I'm told the hope is that it will be done before this next fall.
So, Chip, if you could take us back, and you've done a really nice job of explaining the charges, when all of this came out, how did Mark Richt come to the decision to dismiss him from the team and obviously ultimately see him leave campus?
Well, it was really quick, and this is, I've covered Georgia for a long time, as you know, Paul, and this is kind of the way, the Mark Richt discipline, Mark Richt / University of Georgia discipline. John Taylor had gotten in trouble on those theft by deception charges, and that's a one strike. It's interesting seeing Nick Saban saying that he deserves a second chance. Well, the reality, it's a third chance that he's given him. And, this situation happened with Jonathan Taylor. And as it stood, when all that was done, Jonathan Taylor was still going to play. I don't think it was clear whether he was going to miss a game or any games, but he definitely was not going to be, dismissed for the team and any significant type of suspension or anything over the theft by deception stuff. When this family violence stuff, a violence against a girlfriend, a man against a woman, 340-pound man versus a 170-pound woman, that kind of changed things. And Mark Richt was very swift. There was the dismissal, I believe it was the 22nd, all this came down, the 23rd when it came to light. And by the afternoon of July 23rd, Jonathan Taylor had been dismissed from the University of Georgia football team.
So he heads to junior college, and then the news breaks in, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe in January, I'm not sure when, that he was enrolling at the University of Alabama. I realize there certainly are strong feelings in Georgia, but what was the immediate reaction to Nick Saban taking a chance on Jonathan Taylor?
Well, where the University of Georgia is concerned, they've seen this movie before. I think it's clear, Paul. I'm not going to, I say what you think, but I think one team's loss is another one's gain in the rugged world of the SEC and college football in general. I mean, Georgia's got players at Louisville. Georgia personally lost a football game from one of the players they dismissed in Nick Marshall. And so I think it's clear that where one school may not be willing to give another chance, if you're good enough in your sport, there's going to be somebody else that's going to be willing to give you a chance somewhere else. Nick Saban, certainly he's had some recent success, I think, with reclamation projects. Jonathan Taylor, I always thought he was a good kid. I don't know anything about his temper and how he deals with women and all that. All I know is what is in front of me, in terms of what the DA and attorneys are saying, and those are some real serious charges that I don't know if he's found guilty on a couple of felony charges. I don't know how much good he's going to do the University of Alabama. He may be doing time somewhere. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I hate to even follow up what you just got through saying with asking you what kind of player he is, but assuming he this is the SEC, assuming he's not facing these charges and or serving time, one or both. What do you remember about him as a football player?
Well, he's a very good player. Obviously, when he was coming out of high school, he was recruited by everybody, Alabama included. I seem to recall maybe Auburn being, the next closest back then, but who knows about that. Actually, I would say he was a little bit of an underachiever while he was at Georgia, considering his size, and he was, I think, a 4-star, maybe a 5-star prospect coming out of high school. At his size and everything, you expect him to make a bigger impact. I don't think he ever started a game for Georgia. He played a good bit. He's an interior lineman, perfect for Nick Saban's, 3-4 nose guard type of guy, and you're not going to get a ton of production out of that anyway. So if you're not the starter and playing every snap, you're not going to have a big statistical sample to draw from, and that was certainly the case for him. His year was coming up. I mean, that was he was supposed to be. It affected Georgia significantly not to have him. They ended up starting a fifth-year senior in Mike Thornton that didn't weigh 300 pounds at that position. It was going to be Jonathan Taylor's position, before he left. So I would imagine he'll fit very well in Alabama's team thing. And if he gets this behind him and can do everything that Alabama has outlaid for him to do as a result of what the baggage he comes in with, I'm sure he'll be a good kid and a fine football player.
Chip, I'm not trying to turn you into Nancy Grace here, but you are closer to the scene than we are. I mean, is there any way to make a guess on where this case is legally? I know you've laid it out, but what's your best guess on which way it's going to go?
My best guess is that he's going to get a break. He's left town. His life has been, severely changed as a result of all this. Now, look, it's still got to go. It's got to be arraigned before a grand jury or whatever that entails. I'm not a legal reporter, so anything is possible when something gets in the legal system. I know his attorney is a guy by the name of Tim Stevens. He was an all-SEC guard for the University of Georgia. He's a good guy. He's fighting hard for him to he believes that his kid made a mistake, and he's paid severely for it. And I would imagine they'll be looking to put the screws to this guy. But it's also a very serious charge, laying your hands on a woman. There's a law that just came on the books in Georgia regarding this, with family violence, and particularly when it comes to strangulation. That's a really important element to this, and nobody really knows how that's going to play out from people I've talked to in the legal community. So that's a serious charge, but I would imagine, he'll probably get as much of a break as is possible.
And again, Jim, not to be repetitive, but we were talking about this charge. I don't know whether it came after the fact or not, but according to the police report, Taylor attempted to strangle this woman. What's the layman's term for what he's accused of doing? Well,
it's because of witness accounts and everything. police were told that he ended up, on top of her with his hands on her neck. And that's where you get into serious territory when it comes to aggravated assault, because that's considered something that can kill you. Obviously, according to the police report, this is according to police, there were punches thrown, fist punches to the face. And Jonathan Taylor, we haven't been able to hear from it, but, he contends that not all these charges are completely true. And, all of that will be borne out in a court of law for sure. But, supposedly strangulation and punches thrown, and that's what makes it so serious.
A final question on that. Do we have, in terms of the police report, in terms of what witnesses have said, any best scenario or narrative on how this fracas began?
No, I really don't know. All I know, it was in the middle of the 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning type of deal. Being the beat guy, you can appreciate this, Paul. I just remember seeing a tweet or getting a call, the first thing that next morning, and calling the chief of police and calling the jail and getting the police report. And this happens all the time. Kids get into trouble. But when you're talking about violent crime, it's a whole different thing. With Nick Marshall, he stole money from a teammate. There's been other ones that have smoked pot and things like that. But when you're talking about a violent crime, it ratchets things up a notch, and that's the reason Mark Richt gave no pause in releasing Jonathan Taylor almost immediately as a result of this.
And, of course, as everyone knows, Alabama will be in Athens early in the football season.
Of course they will, and if in keeping with their other of these tales, he'll probably make some great plays if he's allowed to play. And by all indications, this case should be adjudicated before the fall, and we certainly hope it will be.
Many thanks, Chip. Really appreciate your time.
Okay, no problem.
Interesting and a compelling report there from Chip Towers on Jonathan Taylor, now in Tuscaloosa, hoping to play for Nick Saban.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
And we're back on the program. We welcome everyone back, talking about the Jonathan Taylor situation. We'll get more reaction to that. We'll have other guests as well as we roll on this Thursday afternoon. Jim is next up. Good afternoon, Jim.
I'm trying to listen to you finish up on TV with what you just said, which I pretty much almost totally agree with. This is not a question, Paul. I'm like you. I would not dare not want to give the guy, the ball player, a second chance or a third chance or fifth chance if it's we don't know the details. We don't know anything. We don't know what the girl did. That's just, like you said, don't know anything. Do know this, though. Nick Saban's not what you call your warm and fuzzy guy. Some guy tweeted me yesterday and said I was a gentleman for what I said on your show yesterday regarding my stance against what I thought was Marcus defending Nick Saban and the guy, second, third, fourth time chance. But here's what the guy said also that kind of gripped me. I'd forgotten this. He said he tweeted once about thanking me and saying you're a gentleman for what you said about the crimes, etc., that are overlooked to play football. Then he tweeted another tweet and he said, Saban approved his daughter when she beat up, or that, then that's it. I don't know if she beat up the girl, or the girl beat her up, but he said Saban approved that. Did you? I kind of thought that was what happened too, didn't you?
Yeah, I think so. Listen, I'm not sure. As far as Marcus, I'm not. Marcus is obviously a grown man, but I'm not sure Marcus was reacting to this case with a high degree of specificity. I think he was talking in general. So we'll move on from that.
Well, I mentioned that only because of reference for what I'm talking about from yesterday.
Yeah. One other thing. It's entirely possible that Saban, he used the word stipulation yesterday, or stipulate. It's entirely possible that Saban has stipulated that we will take him only if he clears the charges. That's my best guess. Otherwise, it's a fait accompli. If he's convicted or if he's charged, then he's not going to be playing at the University of Alabama anyway. So, Saban took a chance. He put a chip down, assuming that the young man gets through the legal system. And I will say this, Jim, and you know it, you hire the right lawyer in the right place, you can get the right result Not every time,
well,
but almost every time.
You're about to steal my thunder, Paul, because it doesn't matter. But that's where I'm heading with this. It bothers me that one of his so-called proteges, not sure who the pupil-coach situation, pupil-teacher situation is here, but you know what I thought, and you thought about the lack of integrity of Florida State, and I just have no use whatsoever for Jimbo Fisher and what he has done or allowed, and the type of guy he's allowed to play, just winking and hiding and back, to everything that's been said about Winston, and even though there might be allegations, and we also know, Paul, that football players of this high caliber standard are given, carte blanche with the police, courts, etc. a lot of times because of the football program. That we know that happened. We know that has happened numerous times at Florida State, and it's really concerning that could be the case here in Tuscaloosa with the University of Alabama football program. I just can't believe it. I just don't understand Nick Saban, as you said, risking his integrity, his class, his all the above for this type of situation, unless he knows something totally that we don't have any idea.
Listen, I'm not a soothsayer, and I certainly am not an expert on the legal system in Georgia. I'm guessing that Saban has vetted this whole thing out and feels like there will be a positive outcome, meaning that whatever that the charges will either be lessened, there'll be some sort of accommodation where he is able to go to Alabama and move on. And otherwise, I don't think he would have taken him on a flyer. I just don't think Nick Saban works that way. He's the most buttoned-down, well-prepared recruiter in America. You heard Lars Anderson earlier this week allude to that. Did he call Mark Richt and talk to him about this? I don't know that. I would like to know. And maybe Mark Richt, after suspending the player, after kicking him off, told Saban, listen, I think he can be saved. I mean, we all can be saved, Jim. You know that. You're a religious person.
I understand that. Yeah, and I agree. I hope that Mark did do that. I hope that Coach Saban did do that. But we don't know that. That's all speculation. But again, like you and I, I'm troubled. You said you're still troubled, regardless of what you just said regarding what you said just now. You 10 minutes ago and 5 minutes ago have said, I'm troubled by this. That's exactly what I think a lot of the community of the university is troubled by this, Paul, because look what's happened. Look what so easily happens with football programs like FSU. I wouldn't give you 5 cents for there's no integrity down there, in my opinion. And I wouldn't even shake hands with Jimbo Fisher. That's how much I am disgusted in his lack of integrity that he's not displayed in the last year or two with Winston and other situations. I think he would win at all costs. I didn't think Saban would be that way. I still don't think Saban would be that way. So it's a lot of questions here because I do regard Saban with a lot of respect. I like what he does. I like his teams. I love to watch his teams. And I know he's a lot classier guy, a lot better guy, in my opinion, at heart and everywhere else than suburban Meyer is. So I just in trouble, like you said, that he will be able to maintain a clean slate in his integrity.
Well, listen, I agree. Some will say, why are you making such a big deal about this? I don't think we are making a big deal about this, but I do think in light of everything else, and I'm not saying we're covering this because of what happened with the NFL. I think the NFL jumped to so many conclusions that it was downright scary. I'm a big believer in fairness, and I'm not a big believer in a kangaroo court. So, you just can't, just because there's an allegation. I mean, you and I both know, Jim, that because someone makes an allegation doesn't mean something really happened. I think in this case, it's pretty.
I know that.
I will say from a distance, this case is pretty scary.
Well, that's what troubles me, and it is to me too. But again, I think I articulated just now, don't you?
You did. No, I thought you did a really nice job. Well, thanks. We'll come back. Much more to discuss on this and other subjects. Don't go anywhere.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome you back to the program. Let's grab some more calls. And I-Man is up next. Good afternoon, I-Man.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. I'm not going to come on here and quote people, on Facebook telling me how great I am or anything like that. But I will say this. Sometimes the best way to do things sneaky is right out in front. And since Nick Saban has been at the University of Alabama, he happens to bump into kids in hallways at schools when there's, down periods and all these kind of things. He he tends to play a lot of big-name teams in complete transition. If I'm not mistaken, they opened with Wisconsin. Didn't he just hire a Wisconsin coach? And now they've got Georgia on the schedule. Why wouldn't he take that Georgia kid? Because the kid knows something about Georgia football. He knows tendencies. Although there's been some coaching changes in Georgia, they'll probably be minor. But, that's just Nick Saban. And I don't think Nick Saban cares if the kid plays at Alabama or not, or is cleared or not. Nick Saban does these kind of things, and he does them in the open, and everybody's talking about trials and morals and all these kind of things, and Nick Saban doesn't care. He just wants to win football games. That's all he's hired to do, and that's all he wants to do, and that's all he's driven to do. And you've said that many times on this program. He is driven harder than anybody in this country, and he's driven to win at all costs by any means.
Hey, I-Man, before you find too much religion, you've heard of Nick Marshall, haven't you?
Oh, yes, I have.
Yeah, your quarterback at Auburn the last couple of years. He's also
he was smoking pot.
He's also an expatriate of the University of Georgia. So I mean, before you go Jimmy Swaggart on me here, I mean, take a look in the mirror, okay?
No. See, now you're defending Nick Saban. That's what you're doing.
Man, if you've listened to the last 30 or 40 minutes of the show, I think you would know better than to say what you just got through saying.
I know what you said 30
You just have a hatred. You have a hatred for Nick Saban, and you can't look at your own program, which has picked up some players from the University of Georgia. That's your problem,
We're talking about this guy. No, Paul, I'm following the topic. You just don't like that I brought up something that is ringing the bell. You don't like to be outdone publicly, and I don't have to talk to you about that. Did I articulate that well? Well, hell yes, I think I did. Have a good day, Paul.
Looked like you kind of tucked and ran when we brought up Auburn. Let's check out Tommy in Birmingham. Good afternoon, Tommy. Thank you.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call. I want to know, did this kid play ball last year?
No.
Jonathan Taylor. Did Jonathan Taylor play football last year?
No, he did not, to the best of my knowledge.
No,
I'm pretty sure Chip just got through saying that he was out because of these charges.
Okay, so he didn't play ball anywhere. I just find it hard to understand why you and some of the callers are making a big deal about this. The kid hadn't played not one down at Alabama. If it comes where, just like Chip said, where the charges fine, this guy going to be fine on Gilter, I don't believe Nick Saban going to put him on the field. But I guess when you on top of your game and you the best that it is out there, everybody going to take shots at you. Then another thing I want to ask.
Tommy, this isn't a matter of taking shots. I mean, this is a guy that he may skate, he may not, but I would imagine. Do you think it's a good idea to put your hands around a woman's throat?
No man or woman should put their hands on each other. No one should do that. But my thing is this right here. I believe in giving people second chances, though. Just because you make a mistake, I don't think that he done made a mistake, just throw him to the wolves. Some people make mistakes and they make honest mistakes. Some people make mistakes.
Okay, so Tommy, how is attempting to strangle your girlfriend an honest mistake?
Listen what I just said. Some people make mistakes.
I'm tired of listening to all these alibying here, and that's all you're doing. You're just alibying for Nick Saban. That's all you're doing.
Right here. No, let me ask you this right here. What jobs do y'all?
Let me put my hands on your throat and attempt to strangle you and see how you feel.
Well, I hope you don't.
I forgot you're a man. That wouldn't really be the same as putting your hands around a woman.
Let me ask you this right here, Paul. Let me ask you this.
Okay.
What jobs do you and some of your callers be talking about when you say, if I did do this on my job will fire me? I'm a blue-collar worker. I drive trucks for a living.
Okay.
I have seen this happen several times on my job. Well, man, what happened to so-and-so? Why he didn't come to work? He had the most domestic violence assault last night. He had to go to jail. He get out, come back a day or two, he back at work. So when you and your caller say, if I do this on my job will fire me, I want y'all to start calling out what companies and what jobs does this. Because I'm going to tell you, in the real world, man, if you get domestic assault for putting your hand on a woman, you go to jail, you bail out, you come back, and your job is still there. So
hey, Tommy, slow down a second. First of all, most of these cases are not about what the man did or is alleged to have done. Most of these cases are about whether the woman will be willing to stand up in court and tell the truth. Most of the time, not all the time.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Well, good. I'm glad we agree on something.
It's just so amazing, man. But like I said, I guess when you on the top of your game like Nick Saban is, everybody gonna take shots.
Oh yeah, well, when you're on the top of your game like Nick Saban is, it's kind of hard for me to believe that you would take a player that Mark Richt doesn't want. That Mark Richt gave one chance, and finally, when he violated that one chance by getting in trouble with the law for domestic violence or strangulation or whatever the charges are, Mark Richt said, you know what, I think I'm going to let this guy go, and Nick Saban raised his hand and said, I'll take him.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We're back on the program, and speaking about a man who is not out of touch with reality, one of the great journalists in America, Dan Wetzel from Yahoo. His book, Death to the BCS, finally killed the BCS. And I don't know if I had a chance to talk to Dan. Dan, I missed you at the wake a couple of weeks ago. Were you? Did you just send flowers in advance?
Yeah, we had a little ceremony somewhere on Bourbon Street, probably. Yeah, I didn't see you at the title game, did I? I don't know. I was there. Although I only got for the day off. I was in Nick Saban's basement that night, watching old video of national championship victories. Yeah, I think the SEC might have regretted this thing. It was working pretty well because it would have been. We all know it would have been undefeated Florida State against 12-1 SEC powerhouse Alabama. Alabama would have won by 4 touchdowns. Oregon and Ohio State would have had a little game out in the Rose Bowl, and all the sentimentalists would have had tears in their eyes. They looked the sepia tones of Pasadena, and SEC would have won, and everything would have been about the dominance of Bama. So it all changed. So maybe not so good for Bama.
Yeah, things didn't work out very well, and that's maybe why things are trying to change this college football playoff. Well, obviously, the big story of the day is that ESPN wanted something and didn't get it. Dan, can you explain? Is that a wise move for Bill? I mean, does Bill Hancock still have an office out in Texas, or is he on the freeway right now?
Yeah, well, I don't think he's actually making that call, but they certainly have said no to ESPN, and no offense to your employer, Paul. I don't expect you to comment on this, but for a lot of us, there's an endearing quality to anyone saying no to ESPN about anything at all. But I actually agree with ESPN on this. This idea that we're going to play 2 playoff games on New Year's Eve rather than New Year's Day, or this year, the day after New Year's, January 2nd, which is a completely open Saturday. The NFL is in their final week and will play all games on Sunday. So it's a perfectly good day to run your 2 playoff games. Instead, we're going to do it New Year's Eve because basically they do not want to mess with the Rose Bowl. And college football continues to not fully control its own postseason because of its inexplicable love for these old exhibition games. And so a doubleheader on New Year's Eve. And, I mean, look, most of the people listening to this, you and I, we're all going to either be there or watching it. You make time, but there's a lot of college football fans who may not be as diehard who won't be able to, and there'll be a lot out west, particularly. New Year's Eve is a work day. It's not a federal holiday. I know college athletics seems to think it is, but if you're working till 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock out in California, you're going to have a semifinal game start at like 2 in the afternoon, and it's a bizarre thing to do, all because they refuse to tell the Rose Bowl you're going to have to move from New Year's Day when you don't host it. Or just make the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl the annual semifinal host, which would then make all the other bowls angry at them. So at the end of the day, the bowl industry still is controlling this thing, even though the bowl industry told college football for decades this was going to be a complete disaster and a horrible idea, and all their games would end and no one would watch it, all of which was wrong. They're still getting led around by these guys. So, for a lot of fans, it's not a big deal. For some, it is. And the ratings, as ESPN will tell you, are almost certainly going to be down for the semifinals. And it's a strange concept.
And, Dan, the commissioners made this decision. I mean, you're right. It wasn't right. Bill Hancock. Has Bill Hancock ever made a decision? But I realize there are a coalition, and maybe the ones who thought it was a good idea just realized this wasn't worth the fight because of some concession made at another time. But why in 2015 are some of the most powerful people in sports still afraid of the Rose Bowl?
I don't, that part has always been somewhat inexplicable. I mean, look, to get, there's no, you're not getting them to crack on this, but the general consensus is to get the Big Ten and the Pac-12 to do a playoff, you had to protect the Rose Bowl and keep the Rose Bowl's tradition of playing at the exact same time every single New Year's Day. And so they made a deal to say, okay, well, we will protect the Rose Bowl. They get their time slot. They get a lot of money from ESPN. And they will get to host, the semifinal every third year. At the same time, the SEC and the Big 12 decided to go out and basically start their own bowl. The Sugar Bowl is no longer really the Sugar Bowl. It's now owned by the SEC and the Big 12, and the people who used to run the Sugar Bowl are more of a management team. And so they cut out the middleman to make more money on it. It was a very savvy business deal. But they scooped up that New Year's Day primetime slot, and now they don't want to move either. So, again, it's just weird. The NFL, this would never happen. The NBA, this would never. And I mean, no other sport would this happen, where you have a third group in the playoff and having a voice in the playoff and having their needs met. And it's going to change eventually. They're going to realize they don't need these games. I mean, there will not be one less person watching. Not one less person will watch this last year if the game was not at the Rose Bowl, but instead had been at University of Phoenix Stadium or had been at the Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis or wherever else. They don't tune in for the Rose Bowl. They tune in for the national semifinal. And yet college football still kind of believes that people are standing around on New Year's Day like they only have 3 television channels, and it's 1964, and they go, hey, who's playing in the Rose Bowl, And let's watch the Rose Bowl. It's just not that way anymore. ESPN knows it. But college football is just so slow to change. We still have that. So New Year's Day afternoon, you're either going to have to call in sick or find a spot and tell your girlfriend or husband or wife or whatever that we got to watch some games on New Year's Eve and we're not going to that party or whatever.
Unfortunately, I've spent too much time talking about this and not enough on recruiting. But in our final minute or two, you've talked a lot about the big story out west. And I was told a week ago that Alabama was about to have the greatest recruiting class in college football history. But in 2 of the services, they didn't even win. SC did. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, SC having the number 1 recruiting class, and this to take nothing away from Steve Sarkisian and their staff, but you could see this coming because it's USC. They finally have a full allotment of spots, and for years they've had to go with less numbers. There's playing time available. So you combine those 3 things, and everyone's going to flock over there because you're just looking at the depth chart saying, wait a minute, these guys had 60 players last year. I'm going to get on the field. And, so USC has so much to offer. So obviously they had a huge year, huge finish. They got virtually everybody they wanted. And then UCLA, they only have a 19-man class right now. We're going to see what happens with the kid from Georgia. But they had a tremendous day and a tremendous year, and they got the number 1 quarterback in the country. So I think you're going to see the back, and maybe for the first time in a long time, both schools really popping because USC is USC, and then Jim Mora has UCLA going to where kids all over the country are saying, I want to go out there. And look, Paul, you've been there. I've been there, and you wish someone had told you about this place when you're 17 years old because you go visit Westwood, you go to Los Angeles, and particularly at recruiting time, it's hard to sit there and say, no, I think I want to go up to the Big Ten or I want to stay here. It's a place you want to just go to school.
No, it's I've been to both places, and while SC is historic and very cool to be and walk around, I could land in Westwood and never leave. But
I would go. I would. You and I should do like old school too. Okay, what do you think? We could pitch that. maybe get Will Ferrell. We'll just get we'll enroll at UCLA and see what happens. So
I'm for it. Hey, Dan, it's always great to catch up. It's been too long.
Paul. Take care.
One of the best around. Dan Wetzel, columnist for Yahoo, author of Death to the BCS.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
And we welcome you back. A lot of stories making the show today. We started talking about the Jonathan Taylor story. He, of course, enrolled at Alabama. Nick Saban commenting about that yesterday created quite a controversy here on the program. We went back to Georgia today chatting with Chip Towers, and he gave us the latest on that. Also, the hiring today of Mike DeBoard at the University of Tennessee as the offensive coordinator. There has been a lot of success in his past. He was once the head coach at Central Michigan. That's where Butch Jones worked under him. Certainly a comfort level for Butch Jones, but who essentially will run that offense still. And Steve Spurrier hiring John Hoke. He hired him this afternoon. They worked together. Seems like this is get together with your former employee week. John Hoke was the defensive coordinator under Spurrier in the late 90s at the University of Florida. Willie T. Smith joins us. He works for the Greenville News, always an opinion that we appreciate. And, Willie, it's been too long, and I hope your life as well. Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. So we watched yesterday, and many watched and listened to Spurrier, and maybe being there, I would have gotten a different impression, but it just didn't sound very inspiring. How did it appear to you?
Well, having done several of Steve Spurrier's recruiting press conferences, he never looks inspired at those things. I guess that's just the way he is. I guess he likes for these guys too. He doesn't like pumping these guys up, and but I can tell you although he says it's been the same, I know he has worked harder the last 2 or 3 weeks of recruiting. He visited every recruit's house, and I think he worked a little bit hard. He does seem to be a little bit inspired because he's been going to the 6:30 a.m. workouts, which he didn't used to do. So, I think he's gotten his second win. But I would agree with you. He didn't look inspired yesterday, but he never looks inspired at those things.
Willie, I was really underwhelmed with some of his comments before the bowl game, and you know where I'm going here. He gave a very Steve Spurrier-like response about being here a couple of years, and obviously he was called into the principal's office and told you can't say that in the middle of recruiting. He didn't want to make any defensive changes, although we believe that he made a decision to make one as soon as recruiting ended. Let's go back a few weeks. First of all, on his longevity, was he able to put the genie back in the bottle there after he made that flippant remark about being there a couple more years?
Well, it's hard to really say. I know talking to several recruits after he made the second about staying 4 to 5 years. Several of them no longer talked about whether or not he would be there or not. So I don't know if that's if that meant that they were buying in or not. But you didn't hear that nearly as much. But they still had to scramble. I don't think he's totally gotten away with that. We should know more with the next recruiting class, to be honest with you. That'll tell you a lot, especially with some of the things that could be happening when John Hoke is officially here, and what happens with the rest of the coaching staff. I think that's going to tell us a lot more about what's going on.
Yeah, and even before we get to John Hoke, I wonder if the worst news for Spurrier isn't what's happening in Clemson. Not only did Clemson embarrass South Carolina, finally ending that long streak, but I mean they had an amazing recruiting year, and many are pointing toward Clemson as the team to watch now in the ACC. What impact, if any, does that have on Columbia, South Carolina?
Well, it can have a great impact. In fact, yesterday, a young man from Spartanburg, South Carolina, rated the second best running back in the country, chose signing day he's a junior, chose signing day to commit to Clemson yesterday. So that gets them rolling for the 2016 class as well. of course, Dabo Swinney is a very energetic guy, and they have had great recruiting seasons almost every year, even all these years when South Carolina was beating them. So so we'll have to see what kind of, how that spells out. South Carolina's also doing fairly well with some underclassmen that have committed to them, and some that are leaning heavily toward them. So we'll just have to see, what happens. But obviously, Clemson, I think this has to be probably their best recruiting class since they got C.J. Spiller.
Let's talk about John Hoke. I know that there was a delay because of the unfortunate incident on the campus today, but certainly we know a lot about John Hoke. These two, Spurrier and Hoke, have worked together in the past. How is the news of this hiring being greeted by South Carolina fans?
I think a lot of South Carolina fans are just happy anything's happening at this point. But it's kind of interesting. John Hoke, who is either here or will be here very shortly today. I guess the more interesting news to me is supposedly now we're hearing that he and Lorenzo Ward, at least in title, are going to be co-defensive coordinators. I don't know how that's going to work. I do think Hoke will be running the defense. But the thing that really had me scratching my head was the guy that it looks like is going to be kicked into an administrative role is current secondary coach Grady Brown, who, frankly, I think has been a rising star on that staff. I think the one place where they did improve during the season last year was in the secondary, and he's proven to be great on the recruiting trail as well. Last year, he recruited two kids that ended up starting this year as freshmen, Al Harris Jr. and Chris Lamont, who at the time was committed to Florida. He flipped him. And this year, they had a young man, Damon Arnett, who decommitted from them on Monday to commit to Ohio State. And Grady Brown went back to Miami and got a kid to commit to them, a very talented cornerback to commit to them, and signed with them yesterday over Florida. So I think everybody's kind of wondering why he's getting kicked upstairs, because I think he's a rising star, and I understand that it's probably because Hope coaches secondary and Ward coaches secondary, but I think that move has been a little bit puzzling. If that's the way it turns out, it's puzzling to a lot of people.
Willie T. Smith with us. Willie, let's get to the big picture, the elephant in the room. How much longer do you see Spurrier being the head coach in Columbia?
I think, obviously, it's a year-to-year thing. I think I really do think he has gotten his second win. There for a while, I was wondering. In fact, there were obviously rumors that maybe he did quit, for a day or so there, really? And they were able to keep it quiet. Now, I can't confirm that completely, but that's.
So hold on a second. So let me stop you right there. When did you hear this, and what do you know? I mean, do you think it actually happened?
I'm not sure if it happened or not. If it did happen, it happened probably the Sunday after the Clemson game.
And you heard that Spurrier had submitted his resignation and then walked it back. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if he submitted his resignation, but I heard that he was ready to quit. And I know right after that, he and his wife went down. He and their wife went down to Florida for 3 days, and when he came back, he seemed to be energized again, and everything was fine. So. But that's the rumor that's been out there. Whether or not it's true or not, I can't say for sure. But that's the rumor that was out there for a while.
I mean, I realize we're kind of beating our head against the wall, asking about something that you can't substantiate. But when you heard that, did it sound plausible to you that perhaps he had actually decided, I've had enough of this?
Well, yeah, at the time it did, because I know, I know how disappointed he was in this season. Because I really think, to be honest with you, while, a lot of us saw a lot of holes in this team going into the season, I think he really, really thought that this was going to be a very good team. And I think he was somewhat depressed with how it ended. And the convincing loss to Clemson was kind of, the cherry on top of the cake. So I could see where it could have happened. Like I said, I can't say for sure it did happen, but that the rumor was out there for a while that possibly it did happen.
I realize we're not trying to give the impression we're pushing him out. I mean, he's one of the greatest coaches in college football history, but assuming he decided at the end of next season that he had enough, is there Is there a favorite? Is there even a working list among the average fan that they would like to see replace Steve Spurrier?
The average fan, no. I mean, it runs the gamut for them, and frankly, most of the fans don't make a lot of sense. But,
well, the reason I bring this up is because we had this whole Will Muschamp coach in waiting conversation, and that made some sense to some people, but obviously it didn't happen.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, now that the way things have played out, I think Spurrier had this Hope move in mind from the beginning. You know, he tried to hire him when Ellis Johnson became the defense coordinator. He tried to hire John Hope back then, but at that point he was heavily entrenched in the NFL. So he's a guy he obviously feels comfortable with, and from how it's been explained to me from people who know John Hope better, said the reason they get along really well is Hope really understands Spurrier, and the things that Spurrier says and does, don't bother him, and they have a really close relationship. So I don't know, if they make improvements this year, I could see him being here for a while. I don't know if he sticks around if they have another mediocre season. That could be another matter. But if they show improvement, I think he could be here for a while. Like I said, at least to me anyway, things he's done since that period right after the Clemson game, he does seem to be a bit inspired.
Well, let's hope, because certainly he's one of the great coaches of all time. I would put him on Mount Rushmore in this league or in any league. So I was concerned. I know everyone was, but hopefully what you're saying is correct. He certainly. I mean, Hope certainly has a great reputation. There's no getting around that. So maybe the comfort level will be positive. Willie, thanks so much. It's always fun to catch up.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Willie T. Smith from the Greenville News on Steve Spurrier and the apparent hiring of John Hope. A very quick break. Actually, not that quick, but we'll be here when we get back. 855-242-7285. We're halfway home on a Thursday afternoon.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome everyone back to the program. Certainly one of the stories that has caught our attention after yesterday's Cowart story is the one with C.C. Jefferson. He committed yesterday to the University of Florida, one of the most anticipated announcements of the day. Today, we still don't know where he is going to attend school. That's why we have Derek Tyson on, who knows everything about recruiting. Derek, thanks for the time, and we waited till late in the day to call you because we assumed you probably slept past 4:30 in the morning after yesterday. Thanks for being here.
No problem at all. I actually just got back to Jacksonville from Charlotte, so it's been a long few days, no question about it.
Well, I realize traveling sometimes isn't the best avenue to gain information, but you know the question, what do you know, and where is this Jefferson story going?
It's a very unique situation. Kind of reminds me of Alex Collins a few years ago when his mom took the letter of intent and left. But what the situation is CC committed to Florida. He wants to go to Florida. His mom wants him to go to Florida. But his dad, for some reason, is having some reservations, and he has the letter of intent and will not sign it. So it only needs one parent's signature, but he has the letter of intent and won't allow the mom to sign it at this point. So very interesting situation. The dad actually grew up a Florida fan and has a Florida tattoo, a Gatorhead tattoo on his arm. So it's just very interesting. When CC announced yesterday, you saw him smiling and cheering on the video, and then for some reason something has changed. For whatever reason, something has changed. Very unique situation. I don't recall remembering anything like this before, but just a fluid situation. But in my opinion, I think CC is still set on Florida. I know Ole Miss and Auburn are probably trying to make contact with him to see if they can get in, just because no decision has been made. But as of right now, I do believe he is still firm in his commitment to Florida.
Okay, let's explain a few things. I know they're boilerplate to you, but a young person who commits and wants to sign needs one parent. Explain to the audience why there can't be another letter of intent handed to him, or just act like that one's not in existence. Let the mom sign it and be done with it.
Well, Florida, I guess it is possible for them to mail another one, but they can't go and give her one, and that's the problem. And the dad has a lot of control in the family right now, so it's kind of falls in his court. And I know Florida has made contact with the dad today, and that there has been some ongoing conversations. And again, I'm sure other schools have made contact as well, trying to assess the situation. The other, I guess, wild card in this situation is Florida's defensive line coach Terrell Williams took a job with the Miami Dolphins, and that was announced today. And so his dad is actually going out on Twitter and saying there's too many coaching changes, this and that. What? They knew about CC and his family knew about the coaching situation last week. So to me, in my opinion, that didn't play much of a role because they knew that was coming. And the fact of the matter is, he only met Williams two different times. So it's not like they built this great relationship. So I don't really buy that. To me, there's something else going on. I don't want to say what, don't want to hit it what. It just seems very odd that you go from one day seemingly happy about the whole thing to the next day you don't want your son to go there. So just a very interesting situation overall.
Okay, let me try to understand a few more things about this, Derek. So the father's in control. I mean, I'm not trying to get overly personal with this family. Does the mom and dad live at the same place?
You know, that is something I'm not 100% sure on. I don't know if they do live in the same place. From what I understand, I do believe they are separated or divorced. I'm not 100% sure on that, so I don't want to speculate.
Okay.
So the dad has control here. I know the mom wants him to go to Florida. I mean, you could see it in the video. She's crying the whole time he's announced, and she was so happy about it. And CC
was the dad at the announcement?
Yes, he was there. He was there. Okay. And it's on video, him smiling and clapping, and so it just seems a little odd. And you know, for me, CC went to 4 Florida home games this year, including the one after Will Muschamp got fired when they played, I believe it was Eastern Michigan. So they didn't have a head coach. He still visited there against Eastern Michigan. So you obviously know he liked Florida a whole lot this year. And you know, he told me last week he was probably leaning towards Florida, and then he went ahead and committed. So, to me, it just seems weird that he would just change his mind overnight over something like that. So I don't believe he has changed his mind. I'm pretty sure he's going to go to Florida, but until this situation gets resolved, that the dad has a lot of control right now.
Well, let's talk about those 3 players in Florida yesterday. I mean, we watched this all day long, as you did with Cowart. 2 ended up going to Florida, 1 to Auburn. I mean, was there any? I mean, what impact did everyone else's decision make? Cowart was the first one out, Jefferson the last. What's your best guess on the domino effect, or the fact that everyone had made up their own mind?
Well, CC and Byron had talked about it a while ago, along with Jeff Holland, about going to the same school. And, when I actually interviewed CC on Monday, and he was joking around with me, and he basically said, that was a media thing to get all the fans worked up over there being a package deal together. He's like, the bottom line is we all 3 of us wanted to do what's best for us as individuals. And so I don't think that played a whole lot into it. He told me from the beginning, that he likes Florida. I mean, when I say the beginning, I mean like the beginning of last year, that he liked Florida. So I don't think there's a depth issue at Florida. There's a depth issue at Auburn. I think both of those guys, Byron and CC, saw that. They saw that they could play at either school. And the bottom line was, for Byron, it was about his relationship with Coach Muschamp. It was a good school. Him and his mom felt comfortable about that situation there. And there was no depth there on the defensive line. He saw an opportunity to go and play early, and CC saw the same thing at Florida. So they played the same position. So, there's guys that just want to get on the field early, and to me, I don't think the domino effect had really much to do with that.
Okay, if CC had decided not to go to Florida, where would he have gone?
In my opinion, probably Ole Miss. He has a very good relationship with Chris Kiffin, and he's talked about that extensively. He also liked Alabama a lot early on. Alabama was right there in the mix as well. So in my opinion, it had been one of those 2 schools. Auburn's there too. He kept things open, so it really wouldn't have surprised me to see him go anywhere. of those 4 schools, but I think Ole Miss probably had a slight advantage over some of the other schools.
So CC signs this. I mean, all you have to do is get a parent's signature and then fax it in. So best guess, it has one signature, it just doesn't have the father's, correct?
Correct. It's got CC's. Yeah, correct. It doesn't have a parent's signature. And best guess is, it's a pure guess at this point that he would probably like to get it done sometime by the end of tomorrow, I would imagine. I know, but he doesn't have to. He's got a couple months before he's got to do anything. So there's no deadline. He's got to do it by tomorrow or else. But I know all parties involved would like to get this situation resolved so everybody can move on.
The drama continues. Derek, thank you very much. It's a weird and quirky story, but it's just in keeping with National Signing Day, isn't it?
It always keeps you on your toes for sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Paul. I appreciate it.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Welcome back to the program. It's been a good one. Nothing like being a critic of your own show. It's been a great one, maybe the best ever. And it's only going to get better with the next caller.
Paul?
Tammy is next.
Paul?
Yes, Tammy.
Hey, before I get started, I'd like to say your new glasses is very sexy. But if they're a little brighter, you need to shave the size just a little bit. They're a little brighter. Anyway, but you look sexy, Paul. Now, we'll get to the... Can you give me a few seconds? I want to comment on a few things here before I get angry at this.
Take your time.
At Jefferson's dad. First of all, I would like to say that Steve Spurrier, I don't know if everybody realizes, but Steve Spurrier is one of the greatest coaches I think ever. I've always, even though when he was beating us, I couldn't stand him at Florida, but I still think he's one of the best coaches ever. And the reason I think that is because he is not only has he been a former player, he's a coach, he's been just on and off. He is also passionate about what the game is about, what the game is, football. He is so passionate about it. And, yeah, he does get frustrated, and that's maybe one of the things I respect about him is that he doesn't like to lose. And no coach out there should like to lose. I don't care what they say, that losing is going to happen. It doesn't matter. Steve Spurrier is one of these that is so passionate about what he does. And if his kids would listen to him, they would know and learn and do so much better. And they would learn a lot from their coach. And they need to listen to him and pay attention more. And South Carolina has got something that they can actually do in the East and continue to do that had never been done before. If they would just pay attention and listen to their coach. He is very passionate and very great at what he does. Now, the second thing. This thing about that boy down there in Tuscaloosa, I can't stand Alabama. I don't care nothing about Alabama. I hate Alabama. But my point is, I don't care if Nick Saban is giving this boy a chance, another chance, or a third chance, or however many chances you think he's getting. The point is, he put his hands on a young lady. There's a lot of young ladies out there that wasn't ready to fight me, Paul. And I can take care of myself when it comes to a man, and I can handle myself when it comes to a man, and I've been in many fights when it comes to a man, but there's one thing that I teach them grandkids of mine, and I tell my girls, they better not be one put a hand on you, and they better not put a hand on her. And I teach Jackson, he's 5 years old, and I've taught Cameron, he's 8 years old. I don't care what them little girls do. I don't care what them little girls say. I don't care if they pick your pencil up and break it in half at school. Don't put your hands on a girl or a woman. I don't care what they do. I can tell you right now, after all the things that I've done, and my mouth gets me in trouble with the men, my husband that I have today has not once, as angry as he's gotten, or I've gotten, he has not once yet to lift a finger to hit me. And do I respect my husband more than any man on the face of this earth? I sure do, and that's one of the reasons right there. Because my husband can control himself as a man. And I don't care if it's a young man, if it's a kid, or whatever.
Tammy, hold on a second, Tammy. I've never heard someone credit or compliment their husband because he hasn't hit her. I mean, that just seems so.
Wait, Paul, there's men out there that'll hit a woman any time and any day.
Well.
And a woman can revoke it, Paul. A woman can revoke a man. And I'm not, and either way, a man can revoke the woman to get so angry that she wants to hit, and a woman can do the same thing for a man. It works both ways. I'm not defending a man hitting a woman here now, but I can tell you from my point of view, and I know who I am, as myself as a person, I can get angry enough that a man raises his hand to me, I'm going to defend myself because I know who I am. I know that I can get in that spot to put myself there. A lot of women won't admit that, Paul. A lot of women won't say, well, I said this and I done this and I done this. A lot of them won't say, well, I cheated on my husband, which I've never done, but one of them won't say I've cheated on my husband, so he has a right to whoop my so-and-so, or he has a right to beat the crap out of this guy and turn around and divorce me or whoop me or whatever the reason may be. That it works both ways. A marriage ain't no one-way street. It is both people, Paul. And there's a lot of people out there that don't want to face that, and there's a lot of counselors that may not say that. But I'm telling you right now, marriage and women and men not even married, kids and it's a one-way street. And if you don't know the difference on which street to take, it's going to be the wrong street or the right street. They ain't but two ways to go. And I don't care what nobody says. That's the way life is. You got this street or you got that street, and you choose which street to go down. Now, do I like Alabama? No, I don't give a crap about Alabama. But if it would have been us, we got a bunch of dope heads. Look at us. We got a bunch of dope heads down there. We got a bunch of whatever next time. Everybody's got their fault. But do I despise those kids down there? No, I stood by Nick Marshall. I was glad he was our quarterback. I don't care how many games we lost. I'm sticking with my coach. He chose to keep Nick Marshall as our quarterback, and now I'm hoping that kid can go on and find out that until it's legal, keep your hands off of it. But, and another thing, I'm mad about this. Oh, my goodness. Here's where I'm probably fixing. Marcus is probably really going to get mad right now. But let me tell you, that daddy of that kid that down there, Jefferson, if he don't, somebody needs to knock him in his head, because I'm telling you right now, he is a complete idiot. I don't care what nobody says. I don't care if that is his daddy. That man is wrong for doing his child what he is doing to his child. And that goes another way. You can take the right street or you can take the wrong street. And he is being wrong on what he is doing to his child. That child chose to go to Florida. That's where he wanted to go, was to Florida. That's where he wants to put his marks down. And that's where he wants to do what he wants to do. His mother was crying and happy for him. I'm going to agree with you, Paul. I don't think they're in the same household. I'm going to tell you that, because you know that old white gal that was standing by the dad, that old white gal was not happy at all. She was not happy with that boy choosing where he chose to go. She was not. If you could look at when the dad started grinning and clapping his hands, that old white girl, she was looking at her dad, looking at his dad. Look, take it, show it again. Watch her. She ain't happy at all.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN radio app.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.